Today, I'm going to talk to you about faith. I'm going to talk to you about your faith, about where is your faith? How strong is your faith? Where do you find strength for your faith? And to do this, we're going to look at one of the Old Testament characters, a guy called Daniel. We're going to look at a little bit at his life and really what was the crux of the strength of his life? What was the main cog in his life that actually gave him strength and meaning? Because as we look through Daniel, you'll see a few different things that come out really strongly. Now, in chapter 1 in Daniel, he remained really faithful and he didn't defile himself. He knew who he believed in and he knew why he believed in. He knew his God because he was kidnapped from his homeland and he was transported to a foreign country. And it's too easy to give up and just blend in wherever you go. It's too easy not to stand out. And the thing is, he went, you know what, I'm not going to give in. I know who God is. I know who I am. I know who he's created me to be. So I'm going to stand up for that. So he decided to do that. And not only did he do that, but he done it with integrity and he done it with honor. And he even honored those around him who were trying to make him fall. Because the man put in charge of him, in charge of his food and his regime, he approached the man humbly and he said, you know, I can't eat this because I'll defile myself against my God. And then he appealed to the man and he said, look, give us a trial period. Let me show you and test us. Let me show you how eating this healthy lifestyle rather than eating all the meat and all the stuff which they thought they got their substance from. He was like, let me lead this healthy lifestyle that my God's taught me. And I won't define myself with that. And he and his friends actually outshone. So him and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were actually a lot stronger, a lot healthier than all the other men that were there after choosing not to defile themselves. So he stood strong in his faith with integrity and honor. In chapter 2, he listened to God and he revealed the meaning of a dream. So he had a challenge. And his challenge was from the king. The king said, I've had a dream. Now, I want you to interpret it, but I'm not going to tell you the dream, and I want you to tell me the dream and the meaning. Now, that's a pretty impossible task for anyone. So he was challenged, and he had this massive challenge in front of him, and he had to overcome it. And even in our own lives, we're going to have stuff which people will come to us with the hardest questions. Sometimes people will come to you with hard questions to trip you up, to try and make you doubt your faith, to try and make it. But we have to be careful whenever people come to us with really hard questions that we can't give answers to, not just to give them back the one-fix-all answer that we've heard or whatever. We need to actually pray to God, and we need to actually ask God to reveal the meaning of what people are asking us. Because if people genuinely want to know answers to the questions, they'll be happy to wait. They'll be happy to wait for a real answer from God. So whenever people come to you with questions, don't be afraid to say either I don't know or can you leave that with me? Or, let me go and look into that and pray about that, and then I'll tell you what God tells me. So in chapter 2, he listened to God. And not only that, he then went with faith. Whenever God gave him an answer, he went with faith with that answer. So he actually gained a really good reputation of actually delivering God's message. In chapter 3, it's actually not about him, but it documents his friends' journeys and about how they were challenged. The king made a golden altar, and everybody was to bow down and worship this altar, and they didn't. And it actually documents about their faith and how their faith was strong as well, and they refused to bow down, they refused to listen, they refused to compromise, and they said, "I'm going to stand firm." So they did. And they had to, because the consequence of that was supposed to be death. So the king was that furious that they didn't do it, that he demanded that the furnace that they were to be thrown into to be burnt alive was heated to 7 times hotter than normal. So this thing must have been white hot. And so what they did is they went to throw them in, and the people that were throwing the men into it died. But the men didn't have a scratch on them. There's nothing. And the only thing that was burnt off them was actually the things that were binding them, the things that bound their hands and feet. And then not only that, in the midst of the fire, Jesus appeared. a fourth person was in there with them, and I said it was Jesus. I said it was God himself showed up. So that can give us courage that in the midst of the most various tribulation, in the hardest time that we can ever face, we're never going to be alone in that. It's a good reminder of who God is. And then in chapter 4, he was given a very hard message to tell the king as a warning. In chapter 4, a hand came and wrote on the wall. God's own hand came and wrote on the wall. Oh, sorry, no, that was chapter 5. That's chapter 5. But he was given in chapter 4. He was given another hard message to deliver to a king that didn't want to hear it. Because the king, it was a prophetic message to basically say, if you don't change your ways, something bad's going to happen to you. And he didn't change. He refused to change. So it came true. So he gave a warning where he needed to give a warning. And then in chapter 5, God's very own hand came down because a king thought he was above everyone. A king thought he was above everything. And he'd done something which was against God's will. Some of the stuff they had stole from the temple, he used it in a bit of a party, just as a throwaway, not treating them as treating what God classed as sacred. So God's own hand came down, wrote on the wall, and condemned them for their actions, condemned the king for his actions, and said, and because of Daniel's reputation, they didn't know the meaning of the words on the wall, but because of Daniel's reputation, because of who he was, because of his integrity and honor, and everything that he was, they called him down just to say, can you tell us the meaning of this? And he did. And not only did that happen, but whenever he condemned the king for his actions, whenever he told them the condemnation, they actually celebrated because they got the truth of the matter, and they knew that what he was speaking was truth. So that's the history to where we get to our passage. And, in this passage that we're going to look at, they're just reforming the whole government structure. Everything's changing. Everything's being changed. And this is where in chapter 6 we catch up with the passage. And at the start of chapter 6, it said, it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. So they were in charge of, they're like prime minister's deputies, basically. So it was their job to be accountable. Now, Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So he stood out. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. So Daniel had integrity. He was honorable. He sought God first. That was his first and foremost. He sought God with everything he had. And then not only that, he served others the way he served God. He served others with the highest regard, so that they tried to find anything that they could accuse him of, and they could find nothing. And sometimes, as you look at your own life, you can just say, well, I know people couldn't say that about me. I know who I am. I know the stuff that's in my life that isn't right, that isn't put right. Sometimes it's a real struggle whenever you see all the flaws of yourself. But the thing is, we have to use what God gives us to serve. We have to serve with as much honesty and integrity and trustworthiness and lack of corruption and lack of negligence. People could not find any accusations against him, and they couldn't corrupt him. They tried to corrupt him. They tried to find something that they could use against him, but they couldn't, because he refused to compromise. He refused to do anything which he knew would dishonor God or dishonor the people around him or even dishonor himself. He refused to do anything. And too often we allow little small compromises in. The that'll do attitude, or that's okay, that's good enough, whenever we know it's not perfect. So it's a challenge for all of us to challenge ourselves to, can I do stuff better? And if the answer is yes, let's do stuff better. Doesn't matter whether it's it's serving on a team. It doesn't matter whether it's in church on a Sunday. It doesn't matter if it's down in the shop. It doesn't matter if it's in your workplace. Wherever you are, do stuff to the best of your ability, because then nobody can accuse you of not standing up, of compromising. Because it's negligence that actually sometimes is the biggest flaw, because we just go, that'll be okay. Everything will be okay. Because the thing is, whenever we do stand up and whenever we do things to the best of our ability, whenever we do everything that we can to serve God impeccably, the only way people will be able to attack you is through your faith. It's the only way. Because if there's nothing in your life that they can point out as a big, gaping mistake, then they'll just have to attack your faith. So the challenge is excel in all these things. So finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God." And it's a mistake when you try to attack God, which these guys will find out. Yeah. So he had a challenge to his faith. So what was the challenge to his faith? So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and basically told him everything he wanted to hear. They said, "May King Darius live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors, we've all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except for you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed." So King Darius put the decree in writing. So he told them everything he wanted to hear. "Oh, you're amazing, you're great, you're brilliant. Can you do this one thing?" And they basically had to change a whole government structure to attack one man. To attack somebody who was godly, to attack somebody who was right, they had to change everything. And even in our nation, we can see small things just leaning in and trying to attack. And it's not attacking those people who are neutral. It's not attacking those people who don't really care. It's attacking those people that actually want to take a stand and actually declare who Jesus is. Because they're happy for people to hide away in a corner and do their own wee thing. But but for us to go out and to declare who Jesus is, Jesus loves you. For us to tell people that, it's offensive to some people. How can you get offended by finding out that somebody loves you? And this is what's happening in our culture today. So are we going to are we going to stand up for what is right, or are we going to just compromise that a little bit and say, "Oh, right, well, we'll just go back in here and we'll not share with you the hope and the message that we have"? It's something that we're all challenged. Now, Daniel, whenever he found out this, I don't know about you, but sometimes whenever I find out bad news, the worst news, I either want to run away and hide somewhere in a corner. I want to shrink away. I get really angry and I just want to go about ranting about it, just going, "I can't believe this happened," But what did Daniel do? Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where he opened the window towards Jerusalem and prayed. 3 times a day he got on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Just as he had done before. So Daniel was in a routine of, this is where I find my strength. This is where I find my home. This is where I find my purpose. This is where I find my meaning. And he found his meaning in a relationship with God, in an open prayer relationship with God. So my challenge is where are you finding your meaning? Where are you finding your substance? Is it from coming here 2 or 3 times a week? Or is it from actually being in a personal relationship with God, where you actually open up to him daily and just and live in that? Because as I was thinking about this, I was also thinking, what sort of marriage would Katie and I have if I only talked to her for a couple of hours, a couple of times a week? It wouldn't be a very healthy marriage, would it? I tell you what, I'll give you 2 hours on a Sunday morning, 2 hours on a Sunday evening. There you go, Katie. That's our marriage from now on. What sort of marriage is that? It's not going to work. That's not real love. So that's why we need to get it ingrained in our thinking that, to be in a real relationship with this God that loves us, with Jesus and what he's done on the cross for us, we need to actually invest every single day, invest time in him, open up to him, pray to him, and not only that, wait for the answers, wait for him talking back, because prayer is a two-way conversation. It's not a one-way. So be open, because we need to know the faith we have believed in. We need to know this God. We need to know his word. We need to know who he says we are. We need to live in the power of the Holy Spirit, and we need to be filled daily. It's not about, the one-off experience that you have. It's about daily going, God, please come and use me today. God, come and, come and take my life and shape it. Let me be used for you. And that's what Daniel did. He'd done exactly what he had always done, because he knew the only place he was going to find his strength was in his relationship with God. Even though the whole world seemed to be turning against him. If the whole world turns against you, will you still have your relationship with God? It's a big challenge. It's hard to stand up if you're standing alone. But we're not called to stand alone, thankfully, and we're called to stand together. So these men went as a group, and they found Daniel praying. So that's what they did. They went, well, we know this is what he does. We know this is his routine. So let's just go catch him out. That's the whole point of this. So they caught him out, they found him, and they went to the king and went, "Oh, king, you're glorious, you're amazing. Somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do." So they told him off. They told the king of what he was doing, and then the king went, "Oh, no. The one person that I was going to entrust with my whole kingdom to be my second in command seems to be the only person that's let me down." So he had to stand by the law that he had made. He had to stand by it, and he had to condemn this man to death by being thrown into the lion's den. Now, these weren't tame lions. These weren't nice wee, lions that you can walk in and pet. These are wild lions. These are going to devour people. The roar of these lions would make you shake to the center of who you are. But they went and they said, "You have to do it. You've issued the decree. You have to condemn this man to death." So what happened next was pretty amazing. The king went home after condemning Daniel to death. They threw him in the lion's pit. And then the next morning, after a sleepless night of anguish, where he was pacing up and down, he refused to be entertained. And for a king not to be entertained was a big thing, because when the king was disturbed, everybody knew about it. And this king refused to do anything, and he couldn't sleep the whole night. So at first light of dawn, so as soon as it started to get light, the king ran down to the pit. And when he came to the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God." Now that's the church way to do it. Daniel, servant of the living God. I don't know if you're crying out in anguish. It's usually a lot more screaming, a lot louder. He's like, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" He was crying out with all he had, and he was just going, "Please tell me something's happened. Please tell me a miracle has happened," because these lions were fed people regularly. He was just crying out. He probably wasn't even expecting an answer. He was just hoping beyond all hope that something would have happened. And Daniel was able to turn around and say, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel. He shut the mouths of the lions." So whenever you're attacked, you don't need to worry. God will come and shut the mouths of the lions that will attack you. "They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight." Whenever you're standing innocently before God because you're standing in right standing in righteousness, you don't need to fear what people say. As long as you're standing pure before God, you're fine. "Nor have I ever done anything wrong before you, your majesty." To turn around to a man who's condemned you to death and say that was pretty amazing. And the king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. So the challenge is, through his faith, he was protected. He didn't compromise for 1 minute. whenever the compromise was there, because he could easily prayed towards Jerusalem and kept the window closed, and people couldn't have seen him. But he didn't. He refused to compromise. Are we going to be full of integrity whenever our day of challenges comes? Because the more you step out for God, the more you're going to be challenged. Because the truth is, we have an evil one who's out to catch us out. There is a devil who is trying to catch us out. He's trying to destroy us. He's trying to steal from us. He's trying to kill us. And he's trying to destroy everything that we have. That's the truth. The truth is, you have an enemy. Sometimes we give it this faceless entity called evil. It's not faceless. It's real. It's out there, and it is an enemy of our soul. But when we stand in the integrity and protection of God, nothing can touch us. So when you're under attack, will you stand or will you fall? But the question is, how then do we stand? And to look at this, we're going to look at Ephesians 6 briefly. And it says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood." It's not the people out there that we're battling. It's not the people making decrees in our land and people saying stuff. But the thing is, it's against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of the evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand. So after everything has happened and everything that will happen against you, you'll still be able to stand because you know who you are in God. And that's all that matters. It says, "Stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled round your waist." So know the truth. And when we say know the truth, what is the truth? Jesus said, "I am the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody can get to the Father except through me." That's what Jesus said. So we need to know who Jesus is. We need to know who he was. Jesus isn't just a bunch of nice stories. You know, his life isn't a bunch of nice stories. It's actually, it's a framework for our lives. If you're not doing what Jesus did, then we're not following Jesus right. So and as was alluded to earlier, Jesus even said, "We'll do greater things." So let's look for these opportunities. Let's stand up and be Jesus. Let's follow Jesus because Jesus is to be followed. It was a perfect example of how we can live our lives. And then it said, with the breastplate of righteousness in place. So be in right standing before God. And as you're in right standing before God, people can't attack you because you know you're innocently standing there in purity, proclaiming the truth. You're just proclaiming what God has done in your life and what God has taught you. And with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. So go where you need to go to tell people. Take this message wherever you go. Everywhere you go, let that be a resounding influence of your life. May it just be a reflection of Jesus, just saying, this is who Jesus is. This is what he's done for me. And just let your testimony just declare it. St. Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel at all times, and if needs be, use words. In other words, your very existence should be a proclamation of who Jesus is. And then it says, in addition to this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. So let your faith, let what you believe in, let that be the ground that you hold on to. Because it's your faith, your faith will shield you. Whenever you're standing with the faith that God's given you, because whenever you take a piece of land, because God says, do that, you can stand there in all faith, just saying, God's told me to do this. So I can stand in the faith of his word. And I'll believe his word over any other. So if God tells you to do something, do it with all authority that God gives you, because that is what we're meant to do. And then it says, take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit. So know that you are saved. Know why you're saved. Know who you are because you're saved. You're part of God's family now. Whenever you put your trust and your faith in God, you become part of his family, and he will protect his own. And then the sword of the Spirit, so which is the word of God. It's the Bible. the very words of God, which was written down for us to feed off, for us to be invested in. We need to know this, because when Jesus himself was tempted, whenever the devil tried to come against him, what did the devil use? He misquoted the Bible. He misquoted the scriptures. He misquoted everything that we say we believe in. And he used it and twisted it and tried to make it for his own devices, just to try and make Jesus compromise. Just that little bit. But Jesus knew the truth. Because not only did Jesus, right, well, he was the Word. So he was able to correct him and say, this is what it really means. So whenever we know the Bible, we'll be able to stand up and actually be able to use it to actually attack the evil one that's attacking us. And then it says, pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for the Lord's people. So in other words, stay connected to God. Because there's one thing to know all this stuff, but if we don't stay connected to God, what's the point? So there's one thing, if I'm fully suited for war, but I'm standing on my own and I'm not standing in the ranks as part of, there's no point, because one man's going to easily be struck down, but whenever we're together, we're invincible. So then, to go back to the passage, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, this is King Darius speaking now, he says, in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. So he's seen what had happened. He's seen there's something different here. Because he said, for he is the living God and endures forever. So this is somebody that doesn't know this God. But because of the testimony of Daniel, he's able to say this. He says he endures forever, and his kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. So we can rest assured in that. And then it says, he rescues and saves. Our God is dying to rescue and save this world. And he's looking for people to stand up and take hold of the promises which he's placed in here. It says, he performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. God's looking to use us to do these things. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus in Persia. The challenge is to stand up. The challenge is not to fall away, not to compromise. And the best way we can do that is just to come to God and just say sorry for what we need to say sorry for, to stand righteous in his sight, to be in an open, deep, meaningful relationship with him, not just a menial one. Just whenever people can see us, we do something. But to actually, every day, invest in a relationship with him. Because whenever we live righteous, upstanding lives, people can't attack us. All they'll do is try and attack our faith. And even when that day comes, we can stand knowing that we're pure, knowing that we're honorable, knowing that we're just, knowing that we'll love people. And we'll not agree with everything people do, but we can love them with the pure love that God gives. So I just want to encourage you with that. After doing everything to stand firm. God bless you all.